Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yolanda Vasquez, and welcome to the show tonight. Well, you've seen him on NBC's Today Show, CNN, Dr. Oz, and a host of other national networks. Originally talking tech, but he's shifted his focus as of late, and we're all going to be better off for it. Joining me now is Emmy Award-winning talk show host and Baltimore native, Mario Armstrong. Mario, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the show.
I'm so thankful to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love MPT. Maryland Public Television has always been, you know, I was reading the mission statement about how you inspire and educate, and I'm like, that's what I do. Like,
look at
it
you.
is a complete match, and I got my first Emmy here for the show You Can Afford College, so I know what the roots are like here. I know what the foundation is like, and big shout outs to Frank Badovic for directing and producing such a great show.
We all love Frank, and you have done so much. In fact, you've accomplished so much in the last 10 years. For folks who may not know who you are, which means you're living under a rock somewhere, tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you've accomplished. I mean, I rattled off a list at the intro, but you've done so much more than that. Yeah,
it's true. It's been a journey, and so what you have to do is have a clear vision as to what you're going after, and then start making small steps. So I was doing everything from doing things in local television here in the Baltimore market, really getting my feet wet, building my own radio shows, doing everything here, and the goal was to always try to get national. So appearing on CNN and appearing on HLN and then making it to the Today Show was like the Super Bowl for me. To get to that point where you're at 5 or 6 million viewers watching live, and to realize you come from Baltimore and you've kind of like made it in your own mind that you set a goal for yourself to try to aspire to, and then it's actually happening and you're actually there. To really put all of that through, it took us a lot of work, but what people see is the outcome. They don't really see the struggle that took place. So they don't know that that I was laid off at one point in this journey, that my wife and I joined forces together to go after this dream, and she's the CEO. She runs the company. Nicole runs this business. And right when we were going to launch the business, we had a contract with AOL at the time that was $286,000. It was going to set our company up, start us.
You told your wife to quit her job.
I told her to quit her job. We're going to start this thing. I was already out of a job, so she's looking at me like I'm crazy. How can we quit a job? I'm getting the better income. We have our son Christopher, who we're raising at the time, and unbeknownst to us, a new CEO comes in after we've signed our end of the contract, and then we get word on our way there that they aren't going to do this signing party that they would do. And so at that moment, we were completely crushed. I'm giving you the short story very fast, but when your dream feels like it's just been sucked away from you, when you feel like you've put everything into something and you've aligned with your faith or your spirituality, and you said, I'm going to go down this path and I'm going to give it the best shot I can, and you've checked everything in your boxes. We have money in savings, we have 401k, you've done everything, and then you feel like the world just gets pulled from under you. So here I am now with my wife, who I've asked to leave her job to run this company. We have a 5-year-old son, and we're running through our 401k now. We're running through credit cards.
How do you do it? I mean, fast forward 10 years later, look at what you've been able to accomplish. It's quite amazing, and most people would have just thrown in the towel, but you didn't.
No, I didn't, and I think part of that comes from some of the roots of my family. I mean, watching, you know, my grandmother with the Baltimore School of the Arts, I know we'll touch on that hopefully, watching my dad, who also pursued a dream with Armstrong and Donaldson and producing a management company of the soft tones and first class here in Baltimore, awesome singing groups, but then watching him, you know, go after that dream and be able to go to places like Japan and across the world and Switzerland, but ultimately it didn't break like Motown for him, so he had to go bankrupt. But watching him pick back up and still get his sights on things he wanted to achieve, I think those things, and watching my mom, how she supported us and educated us and really made sure that we were a team unit, I think helped me understand that this is long term. This is a journey. So if I can get past this hiccup, that's how you have to look at it. If I can get past this hiccup, not everything is final. So many people think everything is final that's happening to them, and they think it's only happening to them. I sat in the Starbucks parking lot crying for literally 2 hours because I thought I made the worst decision in my life for my family. And 10 years later, it's been the best decision we could have ever done.
That's real talk, and we're going to talk a little bit more about where you are now with the Never Settle show. But I want to ask you a little bit more about social media, because you were one of the early adopters, right?
That's right.
And if I have it correctly, Twitter, nearly 22 million followers, and on Instagram, nearly 13 million followers.
Oh, not me.
Not you. Not you. This is the show. Is it for Never Settle?
Yeah, Never Settle show's got some great followers.
And those are big numbers nonetheless.
Not millions yet.
I know, those are big numbers nonetheless. But how has social media changed over the years? Because you and I were talking about how people post really like the best of what's happening in their life, but that's not the reality.
Oh, and this is a really bad thing that's happening for a lot of people. So parents, I really would love for you to listen up, as well as the young ones in the household, because what we're seeing now is we are controlling our own narrative. So that means I can tell you whatever story I would like to tell you about myself online. I can curate and fixate the best moments of my life.
And look really good doing it with the best filters.
And look great doing it with
Right.
a filter, makeup, getting the lighting right, all of these things. And the reality is that's not how we're living day to day. But we're romanticizing the outcome. We're looking for how do we get to the outcome, and no one's really showing the process, showing the minute by minute, day by day actions that you have to take. I normally say that, your outcomes are dictated by the aggregate of what you do when no one's watching. So the problem is now we get to see what you want us to see, and so we think you're always traveling, or we think you're always living a great life, but in fact, it's not happening like that on a daily basis. So I think social media needs to be really maintained and controlled from the position of, what am I trying to accomplish with my life? How does this help me? Because the other thing that happens is you start seeing too much of what other people are doing, you start to create resentment.
And make comparisons, and you have some really good information on social media about that. I want to.
That is a spiral to misery right there.
I know, you and I could talk forever, but I want to talk a little bit more about the Never Settle show. You are about to enter into your 3rd season for the show. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
But tell me a little bit more about it, because it's the first real-time talk show created for you and by you. What does that mean?
It's a different type of talk show. Most talk shows are created with a executive production team. They go into their offices, they come up with the topics, and then they dictate to you what you're going to see. We start from the complete opposite. It's a crowdsourced show. So what that means is we say, here are the things we're thinking about doing. You vote on the topics that resonate with you the most. You vote on the guests and the people that you would like us to have on the show. In other words, make it the most relevant talk show for you, and then we'll produce that. We don't have all the answers, but all of us collectively can come up with something that's much more special, much more engaging, much more relevant. And then we do it live and in real time so that you can actually ask your questions, you can vote on things. I mean, for those that are in the TV business, or for those that can understand a little bit about this, the control room can go crazy. So just because there's a point in the show where we actually do polls, and you can vote, because you watch on Facebook, and you can vote in real time. The control room doesn't know what people are going to vote on. So in effect, we have to have like 3 different segments ready to roll at any given time. And when we start seeing which one it's going to be, it's like choice A, you can hear everyone in the control room. Choice A, cue up the chick, move it.
I know you love that, because you're a very spontaneous person. So
Yes.
I know for you that probably really gets you going.
It does.
And it's generated some successes for you. I mean, you guys recently received an Emmy. Congratulations.
I know.
This was for interactivity?
That's right. That's right. It was the Emmy Awards, just this 61st annual, just this year, for interactivity. We were up for 2. We were nominated for 2 Emmy Awards, which was great. One was for hosting. Lost that one.
That's okay.
But
it's all good.
it was better.
We already had one from before.
That's right, right here.
Right here. Right.
But yes, we did get that one for interactivity, and I think that's because we really pushed the genre on what a talk show can be. I really am inspired by Phil Donahue. I'm inspired by Oprah Winfrey. I'm inspired by when the early talk, they were out in the audience. It wasn't really about the personality. It was more about the conversation. And what we wanted to do was bring that back with new technology and the new tools and social media to make people make sure that their voice was actually getting interjected into this conversation in real time. And I think having a great team behind us, it just, it was one of those things that, we put that first season on 8 additional credit cards. Like, we cleaned up our debt from having the initial thing I talked about going broke before. We cleaned that up just to find out, in order to really do this dream, because we were pitching it and everyone was turning us down. They liked me, they said we'd like the idea, but no one really wants good programming right now. They want entertainment.
But I want to talk about that, because the funding part of it, the staffing, the payroll, getting a crew together.
Yes.
I mean, you're live at the NASDAQ in New York.
That's
I mean,
right.
It's pretty monumental when you think of what you've been able to accomplish, right? I mean,
yeah, when you spit it out like that too, and I'm sitting on the other
you're
side.
like, yeah, check.
To be in NASDAQ studios, this is NASDAQ, in Times Square, which is amazing with the partners that we have over at NASDAQ and Anna and the team there. there. But you're right, to be able to get there on our own, independent, we did have FedEx office as helpful, as a part of that too, to help us launch this thing. We wouldn't have been able to do it without them. But it took a lot of clarity. It took a lot of resilience. I often say to people, you're cutting off your opportunities right before you're about to get around the corner. And too often, I think people quit too early. And you got to know when to keep hanging in there. And we were having all the indications that we should keep going, and I'm glad we did.
I want to touch real quickly on the fact that your grandmother, because you have a strong family history, as you mentioned earlier, your grandmother was an inspiration for the Baltimore School for the Arts, which is something I did not know, but it does go back to like the mid-1970s.
It does.
And you have like a proposal
I
or
do.
something there?
I have her, this is actually her proposal. I don't know who can see this. This is actually her proposal, dated January 21st, 1976, proposed design for the School of the Arts. Margaret Demand Armstrong. So she was in the school system. She was a city school teacher. She was an educator. She was into music for the children. And she had this idea that it could be something bigger. And then she got a whole team. Mayor Donald Schaefer was involved. Mark Joseph was involved. A bunch of people came to the table to really make this thing special. And now we're talking about a top performing public high school in the country. This is one of the top 5.
That has produced so many celebrities and superstars.
It has.
I want to go to an email.
100% graduation rates too on that
It's
school.
quite a legacy for your grandmother. More shows moving quickly, as you well know. You know how this goes.
Yes, I do.
I have an
We
email
have questions
question
already?
from Janelle. Any advice to move from the corporate world to entrepreneurship?
Oh, I did exactly this. So my advice would be threefold. Number one, make sure you double the amount of savings that everyone tells you need. So if they say you need a year, put in 2 years of savings. That's the first thing I wish someone would have told me. Okay. The second thing is start working your side hustle while you have the day job. You don't want to try to jump off the cliff and build wings on the way down. That's not a smart way. It's going to create a lot of friction and a lot of frustration. So really start working and start building clients and start proving that your product or service is really valuable while you're working that full-time job. And then the third thing is make sure if you're in a family unit that you have clarity with a vision statement and maybe a vision board that everybody jumps in to help you plan together so the family understands what you're trying to do.
We're going to go to the phones right now. We've got 2 minutes left in our segment.
Oh,
We're going to talk to,
Okay, I'll go
Lisa
fast.
from Allegheny County. Lisa, do you have a question for Mario?
Yes. I'm in Western Maryland, and Frostburg State University has a communications department. And I was wondering if you come out to colleges to talk to the communication.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lisa, for your question.
Absolutely, all day. MarioArmstrong@gmail.com is my email address. MarioArmstrong@gmail.com. Just email me. Would love to.
Only got about 30 seconds left. There's a spiritual and meditative side to you, and one of the things that you're talking about now is doing more motivational speaking.
Yes.
How is that going for you? And I thought you were going to ride the tech train all the way through, and then you did a pivot, and I'm like, what's happening?
Well, the thing is, the tech will always be there because I do help people utilize technology to pursue their dreams and passions. But the understanding of having look, in order to do anything in life, you got to have a couple things straight. Number one, your mindset has to be clear. Number two, you have to have a vision. Number three, families got to be on board. So I want to make sure that when I'm helping people never settle throughout whatever it is they want to accomplish, and that we're a source that can help you get it done.
Mario, we're going to have you come back on our show. Thank you very much for your time. It was too short, but we really appreciate
it's
you.
every bit again. It's a pleasure to be here. You kidding me? It's MPT.
Thank you so much. And when we come back, we turn our attention to tonight's Your Health segment.
Got an unused vehicle going nowhere? Donate it to the one place that can take you any place. Visit mpt.org/vehicles and support the programs you love on MPT.
The MPT app puts our programs right at your fingertips, so you can choose when to watch, what to watch, wherever you want to watch it. Download it now.
Are you turning 70 and a half this year? If so, you generally have to start spending down your retirement account. Even the minimum distribution can place you in a sticky situation. Luckily, you can now use your IRA to make tax-free gifts. Gifts up to $100,000 will never count as income, but always make a difference. That's icing on the cake.
Make your gift for this year before December 31st. Visit mpt.org/support.
This is a box that showed you a world beyond your own. It was just a box, but the world has changed, and so have we. And now the box can be almost any size or shape. And you decide what you want to explore. Anytime, any place. Break out of the box with PBS.
In tonight's Your Health, Dr. Graham Woodworth. He is the professor of neurosurgery with the University of Maryland School of Medicine and director of the Brain Tumor Treatment and Research Center, University of Maryland Greenebaum Comprehensive Cancer Center, University of Maryland Medical Center. I think we got it all in there. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
So we're going to be talking about an aggressive form of brain cancer known as GBM, and Senator John McCain recently died from this. Can you talk to me a little bit more about glioblastoma and why, from what you and I have discussed, why it's so deadly?
So glioblastoma is a devastating disease. Unfortunately, we've heard a lot about it in the news media recently with John McCain, Senator Ted Kennedy, and even Vice President Beau Biden, his son. So we've heard a lot about it, and many family members that I talk to out there have shared stories with me of friends and loved ones that have suffered with this disease. And the problem with it is that we really don't have great treatments for it. We have surgery, we have radiation, we have chemotherapy, standard treatments, lots of things that have been exciting in recent years, but nothing has really changed the median survival for these patients, which really is in the range of 15 to 18 months from the diagnosis.
What are the numbers like in terms of either people being diagnosed or how many may die from this disease every year? And it affects men more than women, from what I understand, right?
Yes, slightly more.
Okay.
And about 15,000 new diagnoses a year, about the same number of patients die per year in the United States, many more worldwide. But in terms of cancer diagnoses, it's not a large number of patients, but it is the most common adult brain tumor that forms from within the brain itself.
So how do you treat glioblastoma, and what is the prognosis? You mentioned a little bit about it before, but how do you go about treating it? Because there are several different forms of treatment, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right. Most patients will have surgery as a first step, either for a biopsy or to remove as much of the tumor as safely possible. But unfortunately, surgery cannot cure this disease. Even if we remove everything that looks abnormal when we're there during surgery, we know that there are tumor cells that have invaded out into the functioning brain regions around the tumor. And we know that to be the case because after surgery, even after the combined radiation and chemotherapies that these patients receive, the tumors currently or commonly recur in the 2 to 3 centimeter margin around the region where the first tumor was. So we know that there are tumor cells that invade out, and that's the real problem, is that we can't remove the entire brain. We can't remove even half of the brain. So we need to find ways to treat those elements of the disease that can't come out with surgery and really aren't very responsive to the other treatments, the chemotherapy and the radiation that patients get after surgery.
What are some of the symptoms that people typically experience? I know John McCain said he was tired and having double vision, but he just chalked it up to a busy schedule. But what are some of the symptoms that folks might experience if they have GBM?
So for GBM, usually there are neurologic symptoms. So those could be anything from a headache to a seizure, to something like weakness or things like that. So those would be the most common. It's uncommon with GBM to have it be found incidentally, meaning being screened for something and a scan of the brain is done and it's found. But that does happen in some rare cases.
Let's go to the phones. We have a call from Robert from Fairfax County, Virginia. Robert, go ahead.
My question is, are you familiar with tumor treating fields, and could you comment on whether they were used for the treatment of John McCain?
Okay, thank you so much, Robert. I guess you probably can't comment on McCain, but in general, the topic, right?
Yes, I don't know if Senator John McCain received tumor treating fields, also called NovaCure, which are really these alternating electric fields that are placed on the skin around the tumor, usually the scalp. And these are used for other tumors as well. But in the context of brain tumors, it is now an approved treatment. It's a newer treatment, and in my opinion, we don't have conclusive data to really support it in all cases, but certainly we have patients that receive tumor treatment fields at the University of Maryland and believe it is useful in certain cases, but it's not a cure, that's for sure.
In fact, there really is no cure
Right.
for GBM. I want to move on over to this first of its kind clinical trial in the U.S. that you'll be a part of starting pretty soon, as you mentioned to me. It involves blood-brain barrier. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So this gets at the issue that I mentioned earlier about treating those areas of the brain that have invading tumor cells within them that really can't be removed with surgery because they're functioning components of the brain, and by removing them we leave the patients with significant neurological injury. So the issue is, how can we get treatments into those areas of the brain where there are major barriers to the delivery of drugs and other therapeutics? So one of those main barriers is called the blood-brain barrier. And what that is it's a very specific and unique interface between the blood vessel and the brain tissue that's unique to the brain. It protects the brain and really limits the number of drugs and things that can go into the brain, as well as shuttling things out of the brain. So by having control of that interface, we really control in such a way that we can open the blood-brain barrier in these areas where the invasive tumor cells are, not the entire brain. And that's really the uniqueness of this technology, that leverages the power of ultrasound to temporarily open the blood-brain barrier in these regions, giving us the possibility that we could deliver therapeutics to those areas and potentially spare the rest of the healthy brain.
Sounds like it could be very promising, and I guess time will tell. Let's go back to the phones right now. We have Jack on the line from Prince George's County. Jack, go ahead.
Yes. If these tumors are left untreated, what is the difference in the quality of life and the length of time the patient lives?
Thank you for your question.
Yes, thank you. That's a complicated question because in many ways the quality of life of a patient with a tumor like this is dependent on where the tumor is. So if the same tumor is left untreated, say in the right frontal part of the brain, compared to the same tumor treated completely with surgery, radiation, and any other treatments that could be possible for that tumor, the difference would be approximately 6 months of survival for the untreated patient and approximately 18, 20, maybe more months for the treated patient.
What are some other types of brain cancer, other common types of brain cancer, and are they more easily treated than GBM?
So in terms of cancers in the brain,
Yes.
the most common type of cancer in the brain is actually a metastatic tumor to the brain, a tumor that forms in another part of the body that then grows in the brain, such as lung cancer. In terms of other tumors in and around the brain, the most common would be a meningioma, a tumor that forms from the skin of the brain called the meninges or the dura. And that's a very common tumor, more common in women than men. And in addition, another very common tumor around the brain is a pituitary tumor called the pituitary adenoma.
President Jimmy Carter, he had metastatic melanoma, so it gravitated to his brain, but he also used immunotherapy. Is that something that you can use with GBM?
So not currently, but there are a number of clinical trials ongoing testing different types of immunotherapy for GBM. We're very hopeful that an immunotherapy may work because harnessing the body's own immune function to fight cancer has proved very successful for other cancers like melanoma and other forms of cancer such as lung cancer. So if we can make that work, find a way to make that work for GBM, I think we may have a chance for a cure.
I know you were talking about the average lifespan being about 15 months, but there are some people who seem to fare a little bit better. Can you talk to me a little bit about the length of time that they may have lived after being diagnosed with GBM and receiving treatment, I'm assuming?
Right. So one of the key differentiators that we found to differentiate GBM from other types of more aggressive brain cancer are related to mutations in the genes. So recently, the health organizations that characterize these types of tumors have differentiated these types of tumors, gliomas and GBMs, the most aggressive form, into different tumor types by these mutations. So if you have a certain mutation, the most common and well-known being the IDH, stands for the isocitrate dehydrogenase enzyme. If you have a mutation in that enzyme, then the tumors behave less aggressively. So in those patients that may live 20 plus months, 2 years, 3 years out, it's common that they would have that mutation and the biology of their tumor is less aggressive.
What are your thoughts for the future for patients with GBM? Are you optimistic that maybe this clinical trial will work and perhaps even other treatments be offered up? Because right now there is no cure, but treatments are available.
Yes.
How do you see it for the future?
I think that there are many promising technologies out there, and we're learning a lot about cancer. And I think by learning a lot about the disease, whether it's lung cancer, brain cancer, it gives us new ways to really think about it and treat it in ways that gets to the heart of the problem. Instead of reacting to a tumor that's already been found in the brain, maybe we can diagnose the disease earlier through a blood test or through a test of the spinal fluid that surrounds the brain. And then we may be able to get to the heart of the problem much earlier in the disease, before it's become a major problem and before symptoms have really become known to the patient.
Dr. Graham Woodworth, it was a pleasure to speak with you, Professor of Neurosurgery at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. We appreciate you coming on by and sharing such information and such a timely topic when you consider about the recent passing of Senator John McCain. Also should mention, we mentioned Ted Kennedy and Beau Biden as well, but typically more senior in age than younger.
Yes.
Right, I just want to clarify
most commonly in the 50s and 60s.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. We really appreciate your time tonight. Thanks a lot. And coming up Thursday on Your Money and Business, it's one of the biggest financial and lifestyle decisions many of us face: when to start taking Social Security, something that all of us think about quite often. Now, for all of us at Maryland Public Television, I'm Yolanda Vasquez. We hope that you have enjoyed watching us. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you soon.
Your health segments are a co-production of Maryland Public Television and the University of Maryland Medical System.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.